thanks to Alberta's fixed election date, we know that we're now just 5.5 weeks until voting day, with a writ expected to drop in about 10 days' time. So, to set up what is expected to be a close campaign in Alberta, we're joined right now by political analyst and columnist Graham Thomson. Graham, always good to see you.
Thanks, Michael.
Now, you know, when this year began, pollsters were saying this upcoming vote would be a toss-up. Is that still the case, getting so close to the dropping of the writ?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's amazing to see an election like this. This is really unheard of in Alberta elections. Normally, we kind of know beforehand who's going to win. And not always. Big surprise in 2015 when the NDP won. But normally, right now, we've got, for the first time, we have a binary electoral system, political system. In Alberta, we've got the NDP and the UCP. The UCP is in government, but the NDP has a really good chance of winning, and the UCP has a really good chance of winning. There's 87 seats up for grabs. You need 44 to form a majority. And there's polls showing the UCP getting 44, 45, 46 seats, a really slim majority. Also, polls can be read so that the NDP gets 44, 45 seats. It could come down to a really narrow, just a few seats, especially in Calgary. We're expecting Calgary to be the battleground. There's 26 seats here. Right now, the NDP only has 3, UCP has 23. But a new poll out by Janet Brown, who did it for the CBC, she's a very well-respected pollster, was talking about the NDP winning maybe 18 seats in Calgary out of those 26. So this election could be a real toss-up, really close to call, unlike elections in the past.
Now, how much of this boils down to Rachel Notley and Danielle Smith? How much of this boils down to the perception of the two leaders?
Yeah, this is an interesting issue because, again, one of the questions on that poll I mentioned with Janet Brown just a matter of days ago was looking at how Calgarians, this is focused on Calgary, how Calgarians view the leaders. And most Calgarians see themselves as centrist on the political scale, not really left or right wing. And they view Notley as being kind of centrist, a little bit left, but centrist like them. And they view Danielle Smith as being way too far right wing. So this is a problem for Smith. In the past, we've seen a number of polls point to people tending to trust and like Rachel Notley, the NDP leader, much more than Danielle Smith, who just became premier, of course, just last year. So there's that trust factor, but also the sense of Calgarians, again, this is going to be the battleground. They see themselves more likely in Rachel Notley, more trust, and they like her better, see her as more like them than they do Danielle Smith. And so the thing is, Danielle Smith is becoming a major issue in this campaign, and not for the better when it comes to the UCP. So yes, likability and trust is going to be a big factor, I think, in this election, dealing with the leaders, not just the policies that they're projecting, but looking more at the leaders. Who do you trust the most? And it seems that Notley has the edge there.
Well, you know, Danielle Smith did issue a paper about reforming the equalization formula, and it makes me wonder, is positioning herself as a defender of Alberta rights, is that a key issue right now? Will that work in her favor?
Yeah, you're right. This is a big issue that UCP has used before. Conservatives have used over the years, fight back against Ottawa, especially when you've got a federal liberal government in play. And so you've got the UCP trying to make this an issue. You got Danielle Smith, of course, the Alberta Sovereignty Act that she brought in last year, fight back against Ottawa. And now you're right, today, releasing a paper looking at equalization, saying it's time to change equalization. Let's have Alberta deal with the other provinces to change equalization. This goes back to a referendum in Alberta in 2021, when 60% or so of Albertans wanted to scrap equalization altogether. Of course, a province cannot scrap equalization. It's a federal program funded by federal dollars. But there's that narrative in Alberta politics that Ottawa is robbing us. In fact, Danielle Smith on the campaign trail last year to win the UCP leadership and become premier was talking about Ottawa stealing our money. They're robbing our money, she said. That's a very strong narrative, even though it's not true. It's a very strong narrative. We must fight back against Ottawa. So people want the premier to stand up to Ottawa. They don't like the Sovereignty Act, interestingly enough. So what's going to happen here is that they're putting the Sovereignty Act on the back burner and focusing more on, let's be working with other provinces to try and change equalization. I'm not saying other provinces are particularly in favor of changing equalization, especially those who receive money under the equalization formula. But this is a tactic, an issue that the UCP is raising right now to take the focus away from Danielle Smith and all the controversy surrounding her and focusing it more on what can Alberta do to push back against Ottawa. And that is a common theme in Alberta politics, and it can be very effective and very popular.
Well, we are watching, as we said, just 10 days away from the dropping of the writ. Graham, always good to speak with you. Thank you for the time.
My pleasure. Thanks.